Welcome back to the channel, my spooky friends. Tonight we delve into the dark side of hospitals, places most associated with healing. We've collected 3 chilling tales from the brave souls who work the night shift. Nurses, doctors, janitors, they've seen the unexplainable, the terrifying, the things that bump in the night. So, dim the lights, grab your blankets and make sure you're not home alone. These are the scariest night shift stories from hospital workers. Our first story takes us to the dimly lit corridors of Mercy Hospital, a place with a history as shadowy as its hallways. Sarah, a young nurse, new to the night shift, thought she'd seen it all in her short career. Little did she know her first night shift would be unforgettable, etched into her memory forever. Sarah was assigned to Wing C, the oldest part of the hospital, known for its eerie rumors and unsettling atmosphere. Whispers of cold spots, flickering lights, and a general sense of unease followed Wing C like a shadow. Her rounds brought her to room 13 at the end of the hall, a place she had heard unsettling stories about. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint, almost ghostly light emanated from within. Sarah wasn't one for spooky stories, but the flickering light sent a shiver down her spine, making her question her skepticism. She cautiously pushed the door open, her hand shaking slightly, heart pounding in her chest. The room was empty, or so it seemed at first glance. The bed was perfectly made, and medical equipment stood silent, as if frozen in time. As Sarah turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. A figure, tall and gaunt, stood by the window, almost translucent, like a wisp of smoke. For a moment, Sarah stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, unable to move. She blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving her questioning her own eyes. Shaking off the chills, Sarah told herself it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. Later that night, she couldn't shake the image of the figure from her mind. It haunted her thoughts. She found herself inexplicably drawn back to room 13, as if something was calling her. This time the door was wide open, and the room was freezing, colder than before. The figure stood by the bed, its form shifting like smoke, almost as if it were alive. Mustering her courage, Sarah spoke, "Hello, can I help you?" Her voice barely a whisper. The figure turned, its face pale and gaunt, eyes hollow and haunting. It opened its mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out, only silence. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the figure vanished into thin air. That night, Sarah learned that room 13 had been unoccupied for years, shrouded in mystery. It had been the room of a patient who died under mysterious circumstances, a tragic past that lingered. From that day forward, Sarah refused to go near room 13 again, the memory too chilling to forget. Our next story takes us to the morgue, where the veil between life and death is thinnest and the air is thick with mystery. Dr. Alex Davies, a seasoned medical examiner, always considered himself a man of science, grounded in logic and reason. But one night in the morgue shook his skepticism to its core, challenging everything he believed. It was well past midnight, and the morgue was eerily quiet, almost unnaturally so. The only sounds were the hum of the fluorescent lights and the whirring of the refrigeration units, creating a haunting symphony. Alex was finishing up an autopsy, his mind focused on the task at hand, trying to ignore the unsettling atmosphere. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a sensation that sent chills down his spine. He could have sworn he heard faint whispers from the body drawers, almost like a distant conversation. He paused, listening intently. The whispers stopped, leaving an eerie silence. He chalked it up to fatigue and stress, convincing himself it was just his imagination. He went back to work, but the whispers returned, louder and more insistent, as if demanding his attention. They seemed to come from the drawer behind him, growing more persistent with each passing second. Curiosity piqued. Alex cautiously approached the drawer, his heart racing. He pulled on the handle, the metal cold against his skin, sending a shiver through his body. He slid the drawer open, revealing the body of an elderly woman, her face serene. She looked peaceful, her hands clasped over her chest as if in eternal rest. He leaned closer, his heart pounding, trying to make sense of the whispers. The whispers were coming from the body, faint but unmistakable. They were faint, almost inaudible, but they were there, sending a wave of fear through him. Fear shot through him. He stumbled backward, knocking over a metal tray in his panic. The clang of metal echoed through the morgue, amplifying the tension in the air. He quickly composed himself, trying to rationalize what he'd experienced, searching for a logical explanation. He told himself it was the ventilation system or gases from the body, anything to calm his nerves. But deep down he knew neither explanation felt right, leaving him with a sense of unease. Days turned into sleepless nights as Alex found himself drawn back to the morgue, unable to shake the experience. He would stand outside the closed door, listening to the whispers, hoping for some clarity. One night, he couldn't take it anymore, the curiosity and fear gnawing at him. He threw open the door to the morgue, determined to find a logical explanation no matter what. The room was freezing, the air thick with formaldehyde, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. The whispers were louder than ever, echoing around him, filling the room with an eerie presence. He slowly approached the drawer where the elderly woman's body lay, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached for the handle, his hand trembling, unsure of what he would find. As his fingers touched the cold metal, the whispers abruptly stopped. The room fell silent, an oppressive silence. He forced himself to open the drawer. The body was gone, vanished without a trace. In its place was a small, leather-bound book, seemingly ancient and worn. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the worn leather, feeling a sense of dread. As he opened the book, he realized it was a diary filled with handwritten entries. The first entry sent chills down his spine, the words echoing his own experience. "They whisper to me, these bodies. They tell me their secrets, their regrets, their fears. I hear them all," it read. The diary belonged to the former medical examiner, a man who had also heard the whispers. He too had heard the whispers and had documented his experiences in the diary. Alex slammed the book shut, his heart pounding. He finally understood the true nature of the whispers. The whispers weren't coming from the bodies, but from something far more sinister. They were coming from something ancient and evil within the morgue walls, a presence that defied explanation. From that day forward, Alex refused to set foot in the morgue alone, the fear too great to ignore. He knew the whispers were still there, waiting for anyone foolish enough to listen, a haunting reminder of the unknown. Our final story takes us to the bowels of the hospital, the basement. Old, damp and smelling faintly of mildew, the basement of County General Hospital was not for the faint of heart. It was a place where the air felt thick and the walls seemed to close in on you. But for Michael, the night janitor, it was just another part of his job. He had grown accustomed to the eerie atmosphere over the years. One night, as Michael made his rounds, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was an unusual sensation, even for him. The air grew heavy, and the flickering fluorescent lights dimmed further, casting long, unsettling shadows. He stopped, listening intently. The only sound was the drip of a leaky pipe, echoing through the empty corridors. He shook his head, attributing the chill to the drafty basement. He had experienced cold drafts before, but this felt different. He continued his work, pushing his mop down the long corridor, trying to focus on the task at hand. But the feeling of unease persisted, gnawing at the back of his mind. It was as if he was being watched by unseen eyes, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He could hear his own breathing echoing in the silence, each breath sounding louder than the last. He tried to ignore it, but the feeling intensified, making it hard to concentrate. He could have sworn he saw something move out of the corner of his eye, a fleeting shadow. He stopped again, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. He strained to see into the darkness, but the shadows played tricks on his eyes, making it hard to discern reality from imagination. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing through the empty basement. Only the drip of the leaky pipe answered him, a constant reminder of the basement's isolation. He told himself it was just his imagination, a trick of the mind. But deep down he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that he was not alone. He decided to cut his rounds short that night, a rare decision for him. As he turned to leave, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck, sending a shiver down his spine. He spun around, his heart racing, eyes wide with fear. Standing in the middle of the corridor was a figure shrouded in darkness, an ominous presence. It was tall and imposing, its edges blurring into the shadows, making it hard to define. He couldn't make out any features, just the vague outline of a humanoid shape. Terror seized him, paralyzing him momentarily. He stumbled backward, his mop clattering to the floor, the sound echoing loudly. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out, his throat constricted by fear. The figure took a step toward him, and Michael could feel the blood draining from his face, leaving him pale. He turned and ran, his heart pounding in his ears, adrenaline surging through his veins. He burst through the basement door, slamming it shut behind him with all his might. He leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. He never saw the figure again, but he refused to go back into the basement alone, the memory of that night forever etched in his mind. So there you have it, 3 terrifying tales from the haunted halls of hospitals. Remember these stories the next time you find yourself in a hospital late at night. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darkness. If you enjoyed these tales, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your own scary experiences in the comments. Until next time, my spooky friends, stay safe and stay scared.